Samsung Z Flip 6 might be the most confusing smartphone release in a long time, and here's why you should care. Let's talk about that. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas, and the latest Samsung smartphone is different from its predecessor, but I'm not sure it's a major upgrade, especially given it now costs $100 more at $1,100 for the 256 gig model, though on some sites you can actually buy the 512 gig model for the same price, so keep an eye out and shop around for the best deal. But before you do that, there are some key upgrades on this over the phone's predecessor. The internal display might not seem all that different on paper at Full HD Plus and 120Hz, which is respectable, but Samsung has upgraded the brightness to a claimed 850 nits higher peak brightness than the Flip 5. This is something you can actually and do notice when you use the Flip 6 outdoors on a sunny day. The screen is actually far more readable now, and not only that, but in HDR content on the internal display, you get a better viewing experience with brighter highlights and a brighter panel overall, which can really bring up the details and shadows of visual content. This is one of the big upgrades for me and is one of the main reasons actually to buy a Flip 6 over a discounted Flip 5, for example. Also, this thing is now IP48 rated over the IPX8 rating that the Flip 5 had, which means for the first time we have a little dust protection on the Flip, which is a great thing to see. I'm all for these folding phones just getting more durable and hard wearing so that more people can rely on them and use them without worry of causing major damage. Though I can't comment on the major long-term use of this thing because I've only had it for about a week. The hinge feels solid and robust, with my one complaint really being that the snap shut just doesn't feel as dampened as the previous model, so it's a little bit less satisfying to close. I must point out though that I do really like the side-mounted fingerprint scanner, as it's both quick and accurate. From a performance standpoint, the Flip 6 now has a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor, which is a generation newer than the same tier of chip used in the Flip 5. The last phone was fast enough, but this should go longer without slowing down thanks to the 50% extra RAM across the board, now at 12GB, which makes a more substantial difference than the processor change. That said, the phone is still really zippy in and around the OS, switching through different applications and features, and if you really want to, gaming is also a non-issue on here, largely thanks to the use of the Snapdragon chip globally, so those of us who usually get Exynos models in Europe just don't have to worry about that. Regardless, I don't see proper power users really picking up a Flip 6 in the first place, but for the price, I'm glad that it uses the top chip and a good amount of RAM. Speaking of that price, flip phones have been lamented for lacking high-end camera hardware despite costing 4 figures. But this time around there has been a considerable bump to the main camera's quality. It's now a 50 megapixel main camera, very similar to that found in the Galaxy S24, and the ultra-wide and internal selfie cameras have been kept the same here. But camera performance as a whole has improved. Now, I still wouldn't call these good enough for the money, and I believe there really does need to be either a bigger sensor on the main, or included telephoto, or maybe just improved ultra-wide. But that said, the camera does capture a good amount of dynamic range, more than before on the main sensor, and in pretty much every aspect these images do look better than they did coming out of the Flip 5. Images are still binned to 12 megapixels by default, which you can disable if you really want to, but I honestly wouldn't bother, since the bin mode does improve dynamic range and low light performance, which result in images that just straight up look more pleasant, so I would leave it as it is. Image quality across the board is pretty decent. It's more the versatility that we're missing out on here, with a limited ultra-wide camera and no proper telephoto, so pinching in can cause images to come out a little fuzzy at times. For me, this just isn't the massive upgrade that it sounds like on paper. It's more about the software with this camera. You already know about Galaxy AI's object removal and instant slow-mo, as those are features that we saw with the Galaxy S24 models and then grandfathered in to the Flip 5 and the Fold 5. But this time there's a mode that can create AI generated images based on the photos that you take. It's pretty gimmicky, I can't lie, but it represents how Samsung is seeing its Galaxy smartphones, which is something we'll come back to a little bit later. The battery capacity has also been upped from 3700 to 4000 mAh, so almost a 10% improvement here. This combined with the aforementioned processor upgrade combined to give the Flip 6 comfortably all-day battery life. I wouldn't worry about your phone dying on you early, even with the bright screen, the powerful processor, connecting over 5G for example. It's a non-issue, which is a great improvement, as longevity on these smaller flip phones has been a concern for a long time and it's being addressed, which is great. However, with only 25 watt wired and 15 watt wireless charging, the top-up speed just feels outdated. We're not in 2017 anymore, and for, once again, $1,100, Samsung needs to be giving its phones 45 watt charging at a minimum, over a cable at least. This is one of the biggest pain points for me. It's bad enough they don't give you the charger in the box, but going out and spending 20, 30 bucks on one by yourself, it should be quicker. And that's where things start to get a little bit meh for this phone. The cover display, which Samsung loves to point out in its marketing material, and something that you're absolutely paying for with that four-figure price, hasn't been majorly upgraded despite last generation's Razr having a higher refresh rate outer panel. This is still a slightly larger than 720p square 60Hz panel, and even if they had upgraded it with new hardware, maybe a 120Hz screen, it wouldn't have mattered heaps because you still have to go through the Galaxy Store, good lock, then Multistar to enable any kind of third-party apps on that cover screen beyond the 4 that are included by default and aren't even enabled out of the box. This is a pain point that many, including myself, had with the previous versions of the Z Flip, and either Samsung doesn't care, doesn't know that it's a pain point for some users, or doesn't want to go through the hassle of verifying that the top apps work on its cover display, as to be fair, not a lot of them really scale well to the outer screen anyway. The camera's not getting major upgrades in hardware, but instead gimmicky software features that some will use and some won't. The Galaxy AI interpreter that isn't bulletproof, the transcript assist, the photo assist, the drawing assist. Yeah, you can draw a crude outline of something in the notes and get Galaxy AI to sketch the full thing out for you. And you can take a photo and get Galaxy AI to come up with a cartoony AI generated recreation of it. The browsing assist that gives you translations and entire web page summaries. Despite foldables having typically been made with hardware in mind, because they're foldable, that's the whole point, Samsung actually wants its phones to be all about the software, maybe like Google has been doing for the longest time. Think about it, the Galaxy S24 and S24 Ultra are pretty bland and basic from a physical point of view, with the focus clearly being on Galaxy AI. I think the same thing is happening here, and it's all about that software, almost to a fault. Because sure, it's good that we're getting a faster processor, bigger battery, better camera sensor, brighter screen, and more robust weatherproofing. But for $100 more than last year, there needs to be more from a hardware standpoint. A faster and sharper outer display, quicker charging, even without the brick in the box. The bigger camera sensors with a telephoto lens. Yes, the 7 years of security updates are terrific, taking the phone to 2031, as is the wide variety of Galaxy AI tools that some are going to get heaps of use out of, and some will probably never use as a lot of them are disabled out the box. Either way, the Galaxy Z Flip 6 represents this switch in focus to software, whether you like it or not, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments section. While you're down there, hit like if you enjoyed today's content, and subscribe to never miss another upload. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.